Hello, Washington Heights. Happy Holy Week. This past Sunday, we celebrated Palm Sunday, the day in which we remember Jesus coming into Jerusalem riding on the back of a donkey. Now, I want you for a moment to put yourself into that story. Think about what it was like for those people all those years ago who were watching Jesus riding the streets on a donkey. They're taking off their coats and throwing them on the path before him, taking palm branches and laying them down, hailing him as the king coming into his kingdom. All the while, little knowing that in just a week's time, their lives would be completely changed. Now, for some of them, Jesus will have just been another failed Messiah, another disappointment, a bad military leader who's dead. And perhaps their hopes lie dead with him. For others still, yes, Jesus died, but he's alive again. And with him, death is defeated, hope is reclaimed, and the possibility for them to enter into life in the presence of God forever. It's crazy how things can change in just 1 week. It's probably something we're all a little too familiar with now. But it's this last week of Jesus' life that we observe during Holy Week, these days leading up to the resurrection. In fact, it's one of those weeks that we know perhaps the most about in Scripture. And it's in this week that we watch Jesus do things like have dinner with his disciples. He washes their feet. He says things that we love, like, people will know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. And he says, I am the way and the truth and the life. He says things like, I'm the vine, abide in me. And all of these things are so worthy of consideration, of just stopping and having a good cup of coffee and just taking a long walk and chewing on. But the one I want us to zoom in on today comes at the very end of this week. It's the very end of Jesus' teaching, right before his arrest in the garden. In John chapter 16, verse 33, Jesus says, I have said these things to you that in me you may have peace. And in this world you will have tribulation. But take heart, I have overcome the world. Now there's so many things that we can unpack in this little phrase. Starting with the fact that Jesus says, in this world, you will have trouble. He doesn't say, in this world, you might run into some hard times. He doesn't say, things might not be great all the time. He says, in this world, expect trouble, expect tribulation, suffering. And then what's amazing about that is he isn't like, hey, the world's going to be tough, see you later. He then steps into his own suffering on our behalf. But he also says, take heart. And he says, in me, you may find peace. We don't hear Jesus saying, hey, life's tough, suck it up. Instead, we hear him say, expect suffering. I will suffer with you, and in me, you will find peace. Now, this word that gets translated as tribulation or suffering or trouble finds its way carried throughout the rest of the New Testament, and perhaps more so in the book of Revelation than anywhere else. And now the Revelation is the book where Jesus gives his last words to his church through his good friend John. And Revelation is less about, watch out for these scary monsters that are going to destroy the world, and it's more about, hey, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. And in Revelation chapter 7, John sees this great crowd of people, so big he says he can't even begin to number them all. And they're people from all over the world, from every tribe, every language and nation and people. And he asks the guy who's with him, he says, hey, who are all these people? And the guy says to him, these are the ones who have come out of the great tribulation, the great suffering the great trouble. Or as perhaps it could be called, just life. And it's hard for us to wrestle with the reality that suffering is part of the equation. We don't like that. But it's part of what happens when you live in a broken and rebellious world. But listen to what's said about those who have come out of the great suffering. It says, therefore, they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne will shelter them with his presence. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more. The sun shall not strike them, nor any scorching heat. For the Lamb in the midst of the throne will be their shepherd. He will guide them into springs of living water. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Hear that this week. Hear those words. Make yourself a strong cup of coffee. Go on a long walk. Chew on these things. Hear God saying that to you who suffers. Because, let's be honest. It's not hard right now to pinpoint where that suffering is coming from. But whether for you the suffering is the easy answer of the way that the world has gone bonkers, or maybe it's something deeper, something that's been there for a long time, something that you don't even really know how to begin talking about. As you walk through that suffering, know that Christ suffers with you. But also know that as we watch Christ suffer and we suffer as he suffered, that we love as he loved, and that we walk into life as he has walked into life. Christ doesn't just say, hey, I suffered, you're going to suffer, life's hard. He says, yeah, in this world you will have troubles, but I've overcome the world. There is hope, there is rest, there is peace. And so this week, as we observe the last days of Christ, as we observe his suffering, and as we look ahead to Resurrection Sunday, suffer well, but also love well. And more importantly, be Christ this week.